phone rings. I got something going on I absolutely have to take care of still.
I have to pause at 9 to make an appointment at the pediatrician.
We should be done by then, I'm thinking, so it should be quick.
Okay, we can start.
All right. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that gather in one place, this meeting of the Economic Development Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website, www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner: by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com /remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public may be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so despite our best efforts, we'll post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Blah. So I'm calling the Economic Development Committee meeting to order at 8:18 on January 29th. I guess start the chair report. Myself, Marika, Rob, and Chris has been meeting with a couple of building owners. We met with Capital Group as well as Ferris in regards to vacancies on Route 9, and got a lot of good information from them. What's nice is our vacancy rates are, by their vacancy rates are lower than what I thought they were, but what they're telling me. And it sounds like they're going to stay relatively full. We got some good insight on what we can do to help with them moving forward. Offline, I spoke with Jesse Stein day before yesterday in regards to another matter for Shopsy, but we had talked a little bit about the VMUD, and he's going to try to attend. He had some questions. I think that Chelsea explained it pretty well yesterday at our meeting. He was asking why the affordable housing aspect was taken out of that, because he didn't know if he could support it without that. And he was directed to where that part in the meeting was. So I think he was watching that yesterday, and I think he's going to try to pop in with questions today. So we may be seeing him, and I may bounce the agenda around when he gets here just to accommodate. Other than that, I don't really have much else to say under my chair report. So under members, I have a vacancy report from Suzanne. Suzanne, do you want to touch base on that? Of course, I'm like a waiter, and I got you while you're in the middle of your breakfast.
Sorry. I'm running behind this morning. Yeah, so I can talk all day about real estate. But if we want to keep it to like the Route 9 corridor, so I dug in a little bit last night just to kind of freshen up the stats a little bit. And there are a few little moving things here and there, but if you look at Route 9, just the corridor, we track a couple other buildings in Southborough that are not right on Route 9. So that vacancy number is a little bit higher, but it still comes out to about 27% vacant. And when you're talking about 1 million square feet of total space like that, it's, any 250,000 square feet of space available is gonna, that's why it's so high, right? It's your number, so your denominator is so low in general. So any vacancy really ticks that number up. I think, so I took a good look at that. I think, based on reading the notes from the meetings this week with Ferris and Capital Group, I think they're some of our biggest assets right now in town in terms of obviously the buildings they own, but also driving kind of change and driving the tenant base and driving all of that. Our vacancy rates are high compared to some of the other towns, but not in relative terms, they're not that different. I think I've done a bunch of talking to more of the brokerage community in the last few weeks to kind of get a handle on what the perception of Southborough is when they're leasing when they're out with tenants and they're looking to lease space. And I think, there's definitely, surprisingly, some of them actually consider White's Corner one of the biggest assets around in terms of this stretch of Route 9, in terms of there being a Starbucks there, Vinbin, all of that is really definitely a plus. But then the comments stop there. That's it, right? So you're forced to go, from a tenant perspective, you're forced to go to Westboro or Framingham for any food related, if you want lunch, you want anything healthy, you want to work out, you want a car wash, you want a clean, there's not the all encompassing amenities that the tenant base tends to look for. So that is what tends to push, I think, companies to look like up north a little bit. So there's been, a big sort of migration up to Marlborough that's really taken off, and they've done a great job at sort of allowing development and attracting companies and becoming known as sort of a business friendly community. But it's not just that, it's not just welcoming, it's also allowing the amenities to kind of evolve, right? So they want the companies to be there, they want to drive that business. So I think that's a big, the whole concept of being on 495 and location is huge. So Southborough has that right there. They have that stretch of Route 9, but I do think one of the detriments there is the turnaround access too. So that's been a big comment from a lot of the brokers. There's also, which I know is one of John's pet projects, the desire for more shuttle service, particularly in some of those business parks. So particularly I think the 118, 120, that area, they'd love to see some more shuttle access to the MBTA. So right now, obviously, it's a little bit of a moot point, but as we come out of this and they talk about a little bit of the reverse migration, and they want, that's kind of a drive that keeps coming up in conversation. The other thing that keeps coming up is the lack of sewerage. So that is a huge factor for a lot of companies. And I think it came up in the Ferris conversation the other day, life science development is all that pretty much anybody's talking about right now. And looking at whether buildings can be converted to a life science building, and whether or not they even can is one. I mean, there's a lot of requirements in terms of floor load, building height. There's a lot of structural issues. And so, but that conversation can't even happen if the sewerage is not part of it. So that sort of takes that out of consideration. So I think, really, I think our key buildings are in good shape, right? They're leased. I think the CAS building is, going to be that big block that sits there for, it's been sitting for 8 to 10 years already. I think it has the potential to keep sitting without any real investment. That's really I feel like that's the big sort of chunk of space that's sitting out there. I know 118, so the way we track our statistics, it's available because they haven't fully delivered the space yet. If it doesn't get leased, that will hit the vacancy number, mid-year, and that will drive it up to, I think, 35, 40% vacant. But I'm pretty confident that that will get itself leased. That space is going to be, they're doing a great job over there. And I heard they're putting some fire pits outside. So they're doing things to attract, the tenant base to want to stay and work in the community. But they alone can't do it, right? So like the building can only do so much. If the amenities around are not there, then they're going to keep looking and moving elsewhere. So I think that's like the key, is that it's a whole package. Employees don't want to have to drive 10, 15 minutes on a lunch break to go grab lunch, and turns out to be a half an hour of their time. So I think that's a big, I think the amenities, really trying to focus on that Route 9 stretch and being able to add some strong amenities is going to continue to drive these buildings to lease. And a lot of them are, the Capitol and the Ferris Group properties are great properties and in demand. And we're in a location that's, desirable from a location standpoint. So I think we traditionally are known as not as easy to do business with from the brokerage community. There's been some comments about reaching out to, I know Marlboro and their economic development committee is much more of a established, part of the fray in Marlboro. But they have built a really good rapport with a lot of the brokers, and, connect with them on a, quarterly basis, kind of one-on-one meetings just to connect and see what's going on. And I think that personal relationship has helped to drive, the conversation around what kind of tenants they want, what kind of, they keep them in the conversation as they're talking about, as the brokers are out, trying to help these companies figure out where they want to land, right? That sort of relationship brings them to top of mind, right? So I think that's something to consider as we move forward. I think there's probably there's a handful of brokerage firms. I looked last night to see kind of who reps all of these buildings, right? And you've got like probably 5 key players, right? That we really need to kind of stay in the fray and stay connected to. So I think that would be a focus, is not even just the entire brokerage community, but like the ones that are really leasing the buildings here too, are real assets that we should be leaning on. So that's kind of what I have. I could go on all day long, but.
How often do you think we should hit up the brokers?
What'd you say?
How often do you think we should try to meet with the brokers? Once a month?
No, I would say
Quarterly?
Yeah. Yep. And it's a handful. It's JLL, it's Colliers, it's RW Homes, it's Parsons, and it's CB. So
do you guys remember when we had those brokers breakfast series back a few years ago? We did them for a while, and they were quarterly, and we would present on a topic, and it actually spurred a lot of great conversation and ended up being kind of the launching pad for some of our other initiatives, including downtown, honestly. We just sort of found a topic, invited everyone to the senior center. Obviously we can't do that now, but thinking ahead, hopefully a few months, if we could start doing something like that again, because until now we've sort of had a lull. There was some question going back and forth, like, oh, is this too much? Are we meeting with them too often? But now, obviously, it's been a couple of years since we've really formally met with them at all. So maybe bringing that back even twice a year or something. It wasn't. I don't recall them being very difficult to throw together once we kind of had a template for it. And, sometimes we invited speakers. It's how we got to meet, build the relationship with the ULI people. So it was, something that was not just a check-in with the brokers. It served as that, but it was also offering them something that was of value in some sort of learning way. We could potentially do a Zoom on the state of the market. Obviously, they know a lot about that, but it's something that's maybe a little bit deeper dive for our local brokers. That's just an idea that we could do by Zoom and keep it less formal for now if we want to do something, in the next few months.
And I think like we have to kind of think about it in two ways, sort of too. Like there's the what you call the landlord brokers, right? So they're the brokers that rep the owners of the building. So they're the ones that are, leasing the space on that side. So that's kind of the list I gave you. Then there's the whole tenant rep side of, of the brokerage world where they're only focused on bringing a tenant in to find the right match, right? And so it's almost two different conversations that you're having. And I feel like the landlord side is probably a little bit more like small group, one-on-one, kind of similar to what you're doing with like Ferris and Capital now. And it, like, once a quarter, twice a year, just kind of that like cadence, checking in, kind of just building the rapport. I mean, I have a rapport. I know most of these people, like, but I have to kind of walk that fine line. But I think it's building that rapport and getting them to really feel like they know that they're not top of mind, but like we want to really be driving the business here, right? Like we really want to put in the effort to help them get a tenant in that space, right? And then the tenant side is a lot more, that's I think where some of the broker breakfast comes in really getting them to understand what Southborough has to offer. What, you're casting a wider net.
Yeah, I wanted to say the landlord reps, they would love it if the Economic Development Committee took a tour of one of their spaces. Because the landlord rep can go back to the owner and say, hey, listen, I took the Southborough Economic Development team through your building. It gives them value. So, when the pandemic is over, perhaps touring some of those properties with the landlord rep kind of gets us a little bit greater in with them. And then on that tour, we say, hey, have you shown it to anyone? Which brokerage house has brought a couple of tenants through? Oh, you ended up talking with, Joe or Pete. And then we get some names we can follow up with and say, hey, I understand you were looking at Southborough. Can you give us some feedback? And, the landlord reps are really the people who are going to help bring us in to those tenant rep people too.
Yep.
So
for what it's worth, they're doing tours in person now. I can tell you that they are. And it's actually not a bad time. I mean, depending on who's comfortable doing what, but the buildings are empty.
Listen, like I've been in the Kaz building when Kaz was there, as working with Marlboro on their relocation. I haven't been in that building in years. So it's one of those big empty elephants on Route 9. We could talk with the landlord rep and say, hey, listen, do you mind taking the economic development team through? And that might be something. Same thing with one of the other ones closer to Starbucks.
Yep.
Yeah, I think those are, I remember if I remember correctly from a couple years ago when it first became vacant, there were some like different issues with that building, not just with the building, but with I think the owner we tried reaching out to the owner's in New York. I know we did talk to the broker there, and I think the brokers came to one of our broker breakfasts probably 2 or 3 years ago. And we did try to do that, but I agree. It's definitely worth it to maybe re-up our efforts. And I love the idea of separating the landlord and the tenant brokers, because you're right. We've always just lumped them together, but their interests are different. And maybe even doing a Zoom with landlord reps, in the shorter term about how to, sell how to pitch your properties during COVID. I mean, again, I'm sure they know a lot more about this than maybe any of us do, but just as a place for them to share ideas and talk about the landlord side market a little bit.
And a lot of these guys and gals, I should say, have worked in this market for years. Like they're very seasoned in this region. So I think that they could potentially provide a lot of good insight, right? With what they're comfortable talking about, but and there's a lot of confidentiality issues that kind of arise out of these, but I think that they provide a lot of insight as to, why somebody's choosing you know, Southborough versus Westborough versus Marlborough versus going inward versus going west, right? Like they're in the nitty gritty, right? And so I think getting some different perspectives from that would be really helpful.
What's nice is all the information we've gathered from the building owners as well as you're coming back and the brokers are all roughly the same issues. Limited use of the building due to septic, problem with public transportation coming out to them. I'm hearing this from the owners of the building. I'm hearing this from the tenants in the buildings. And now I'm hearing it from the brokers outside, as well as turnaround on Route 9. So these are all things that I would hope would be easily enough to address, especially the transportation. Ideally, I'd like to have all this information gathered and put in. Marika's been working on a great presentation on Route 9 and present it to the selectmen by March to really say, hey, these are what we've identified as problems. These are the easy ones to fix, especially because I'm pretty sure there's grant money out for last mile transportation right now for that shuttle bus. As for getting back to the CAS building that you were talking about, got some good information on that. When we were talking to Ferris the other day, he said that's more than likely going to be empty for at least another 10 years because there's so much other better real estate available right now to anybody that there's going to cost like $75 a foot to fix that building. He's only going to be able to rent it out for $18 to $25 a foot. So he had said, we're probably better off repurposing that or trying to get zoned for residential or something like that. So, being on Shopsy and Housing Authority, ding, 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 got ideas on that. And I found out like it's an 8-acre site. Behind the building itself is zoned residential. So it might be something that we could work with the state or something to somehow make that into like Colonial Gardens, because I know everybody in this would rather see a business in it, but if it's going to sit empty for another 10 years and it's been empty for 10 years, I'd rather see it be used as
opportunity for mixed use development then. I mean, because that's, I agree. We've talked a lot about, especially if we can't tackle, affordable housing downtown, how can we support it in other areas of the town? And on 8 acres, maybe there's room for a little bit of both, because I'd imagine, I guess it's done, there are apartment buildings on Route 9, but most people would prefer not to live right on Route 9. So maybe if they're kind of tucked behind some commercial properties, then maybe that makes it a win-win.
Yeah, I'll talk to him about what he's going to do with it. But so I talked a little bit with the state, and there's money available like for housing such a different, a totally different thing. But there's money available like up to $150,000 a unit to turn that into affordable housing, like a Colonial Gardens or such like that. So there might be a very small cost to the town, and then the state could take it over. But the backland of it, a totally different thing. But mixed use would be great across the street at like where the Andrea / for lack of a better word, the stone building next to it that's in between that and the thing. But anyway, I do want to just say Jesse Stein is on right now as the second me. Hi, Jesse. So once we finish this, I may bounce this around. So I just want to let everybody know that he is on. And that is it. So anybody else have anything to talk about Route 9? And maybe how we could figure out who do we need to talk to about getting more turns around on it? I'm assuming that's a state thing. I have to probably go to DPW and ask them to petition it, correct?
Carolyn Dykma might be a good person.
Yeah.
She
So
was helpful.
turnarounds, the transportation, and septics are the big issues on it. Thank you, by the way, Suzanne, for putting that together.
And Marika, if you want to, if we want to think about setting up some smaller group, like with the brokerage world, I can give you a bunch of names of specific people that we should connect with.
Yeah, that would be great.
I need to be careful about my involvement, obviously.
You can send me an email offline.
Yeah, I can send you an email with their names and
Yeah.
I'm happy to kind of push them a little bit to jump in because I know a lot of them, but I do think it would be good. And I think it's going to be a case where you need to do it kind of one-on-ones. Like they're not going to necessarily all jump on together. But I think you could have some good conversations with,
Yeah, I found it interesting. We had a resident, Arlen Brown, who is a broker, and I think he works for Gary Holmes. He is incredibly smart about the buildings and what people are looking for. And I think it'd be helpful to get somebody like him to speak to us about how he operates. I mean, he used to live in Southborough, but I think we ought to keep that in mind. Some of these brokers are very savvy and have insights we don't understand.
Marika, maybe we can schedule them like we have been with like Ferris and Capital and stuff, maybe throw in a broker a week as well into the
Yeah,
mix.
so I'm trying to kind of continue our momentum. So every Wednesday, I'm trying to set up meetings. So we'll continue with the developers, the local developers. I reached out to Kevin Brawley because I think he markets the CAS building.
yeah, he does. Yep.
So I think we should first, do the one-on-ones like we've been doing with Ferris and Capital Group. And after we've kind of established a more, tighter relationship, we can always do like a quarterly group session. I mean, I think Ferris is great. I'm now kind of in touch with Ryan, the commercial guy. So, I try to just keep in touch with them. I mean, I am in touch with some of these brokers on and off whenever I get like inquiries from the state when they're looking for, properties or space. I do email them. And so there's a little bit of back and forth, but
And they get that from me too.
yeah, so, let them know there's someone in Southborough. But, I think it's great to start that relationship and do some tours. I mean, I thought even Ferris will be great if they can tour their new building that they just renovated at Southborough, and maybe we can invite some Board of Selectmen to join us. I think that would be the next meeting. And he already indicated that it would be great to have a quarterly or a biannual meeting as a standard thing.
And where we've done it in the senior center before, there's the possibility once the world opens back up again that a Ferris or Capital Group, they might be willing to host something like that if they have a space, because a lot of them have bigger spaces and they might be happy to kind of show off their what they've done in their buildings, like just get more people, another reason to get people in the space.
I think the other thing we've got to keep in mind is every time I thought the meeting with Dave Ferris, Bill DiPietri, invaluable. We've got to get the selectmen involved in those meetings. At least one, or members of the planning board, ZBA. So internally, other committees are understanding the sophistication and the requirements and the complexity of what it is to enable this town to grow and prosper. I don't think the average person or even on these other committees have no clue what they go through and what it takes to do what we are doing, which I think is phenomenal. So my suggestion is let's get advocates on each of these committees who are critical to making, I mean, the biggest thing Dave talked about and Bill talked about is the process for getting a permit. I mean, the speed levels are just negligible in our town. There's no respect for the time it takes and how it impacts developers and the opportunities to get tax revenue. So
it also sounded like, speaking with him, that, they got a tenant that's coming in and they got all this time before they sign the lease, and all of a sudden they sign the lease and the people are like, you got to get me in by this time. So he's against the wall. That's how I took it. Like, he's against the wall. So I think it's, a little bit of both. I think maybe the permitting process could be faster, and I think they could be more prepared. And I think it's because they're already hurried trying to get it, and they have a bigger sense of urgency than I think most departments do, because their tenants trying to get in as fast. Is that what you took out of that, Robert, Marika, as well?
That I guess it's really important for for that process to go quickly, because every day that building is empty is money, costs money for the tenant or the owner. But similarly, it will it's great to fill those buildings as quickly as possible also for the town. Because like he said, if the empty building, like 118 Turnpike Road, would have like, I think it would, tax return is like 3 million. If it's filled, it's 9 million in tax return. So that's a huge amount of revenue for the town. And like Suzanne said, we don't have a lot of, office buildings. So whatever vacancies we have makes a huge difference. So I think the town and the Board of Selectmen and everyone should be aware how important that is for our, for our budget, for our revenue picture.
Yeah, Marika, you nailed it on the head there. We've got to keep showing the disparity of what happens when we let a building go vacant for so long and how that impacts revenues. If we articulate that regularly to the community, whether it's on mysouthborough.com or that every time we see a select person, is that we articulate the loss of revenue based on the factors that impact how quickly we can get a permit approved, et cetera. So Marika's right on track with that. So thank you.
Just one last thing I'll throw in is that in terms of the speed and what a lot of the owners are facing right now, and I think is going to be an issue for the next probably 18 to 24 months, a lot of companies have pushed off their decisions, their real estate decisions. And so if they're going to come up upon these lease expiration dates quick, right? And they haven't made a decision. And so their need to move is either they're going to have to stay or they're going to choose to move. And there's not going to be like, traditionally they will do it a year in advance, right? That's not the case right now. So that speed is going to become even more of an issue.
Anything
Who's
else? For
next?
anyone? Sorry. Anybody else have anything on their name? No. Would anybody have any opposition to me holding off on the coordinator's report and go to Julie with downtown district? And that way on the status? And that
Actually,
way,
if I can just, because I have some, I just want to talk about one thing. So
Absolutely.
It maybe will tie into our whole discussion. So I attended a webinar hosted by the Lieutenant Governor, Karen Polito, and the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Mike Keneally, which is great. It's all to do about grant and how to get grants in the future. So they've created a kind of like a portal, so a one-stop shop for everyone to go to. Instead of, for economic development housing, instead of trying to find individual grants for individual little parts of a project, they're trying to make it a bit of a more transparent process, and also be the different agencies will be more of like consultants, so they kind of help you, help you on the way. So it was really, really exciting and interesting to hear about that. Basically, where should I start? So it's called the Community One Stop for Growth. And there are like 10 different grant programs that are combined in that program. So what a community does is submit their intentions or their strategic plan and say, okay, these are the projects we're working on, and this is what we're, the grant money we are looking for. And you submit that, and they'll look at it, and they kind of say, okay, you've applied for this grant, but maybe, so they'll kind of spread it around through different agencies, and come back with you with some recommendations, or they'll say, yeah, this looks great, go ahead, and then you can go and apply for the grant. So it's like an annual process, which I think is helpful. And I guess what it means for us is that we need to have together, I think the town needs to work together and come up with like a strategic plan or a white paper saying, okay, these are the issues. Maybe take the master plan as a starting point. These are the things we'll be working on this year. For instance, EDC, we have our downtown initiative, of course, which we already received grant money for that. But now Route 9, we've maybe identified certain underutilized lots, and we want to have a look at the zoning, because we need to revitalize, this business corridor. So we need to, we'll apply for a grant by showing them what our intentions are, and they will, work with us and see which grants would apply. So on this website, basically they have grants from the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, the Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as Mass Development. So, I mean, I know Claire was attended the presentation as well. I don't know if you want to add anything to it. But I think it's something we need to really look at carefully, and basically you can start applying in February, to be eligible for this year's grant program, and it includes like infrastructure projects, everything. It's like the whole spectrum of of projects that you're working on. So I don't know, maybe Rob, you can add to
Yeah, I participated in that. And at some point in time, I'm going to have to take a step back, because my organization is one of the groups that is giving out the money. But from an education standpoint, as Marika said, it makes sense to submit letters of interest for projects up to potentially 5. And they can run the range from planning to actual buildings themselves. There's one called underutilized properties, which is actually run out of Mass Development. And that's actually building itself. There's some that take a look at downtown zoning and districts. That's from, I think, EOHED, as well as MassWorks and things like that, if you finally get a developer on there. I think it makes sense to coordinate with the planning board to identify those 5 priorities and at least express those letters of interest for the top 5. Are there more than 5? Yes. But going in and knowing that it's one stop for those 10 separate grants, we would be remiss in our economic development endeavors if we didn't at least try to get in there with multiple different projects at different levels of readiness. So I think we should do that. I think it should be an agenda item for us.
I agree.
Sorry, I think it should be an agenda item, and I think it should be a priority agenda item.
Yes.
Because when does it have to be in? February what?
No, it opens February 8th, I believe, and it continues on. But the earlier you get it in, the better. So I think it should be a priority, and we should come up with a strategic plan, like what we plan to do over the next year, and kind of submit that. I just wanted to say, I know Sam is on the call as well, that they'll be looking at it. They're competitive grants, of course. And I just wanted to say in terms of what we are currently doing, and emphasize the importance of this downtown zoning thing that we're currently working, that we are moving forward, and that we show the intent that we actually do want to make a change. There's no option to just not do anything. So if people are kind of have problems with the zoning that we're proposing, the only option is to discuss it and make changes, but I don't think it's an option to not bring something forward at town meeting, because that will jeopardize our future grant opportunities. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
I know I came a little late, but did the selectmen meet Tuesday, and did our downtown initiative come up?
Yeah, 1 second. Claire raised her hand. Claire, can I ask her to?
Yes, please.
Oh,
Claire?
thanks for recognizing me. Folks, this program, and I just forwarded to you an email that I sent to Vanessa, thanking her for forwarding the link to Marika. This came from an MMA hosted seminar, but the people who were on there were Karen Polito, and this is a joint project among several different agencies within the state. For those of us who have been doing this economic development stuff for a while, one of the most common questions was, how do you find out about all this stuff? Well, instead of having to hunt and peck around combis or any of the other situations, this is where all of these grants are going to be listed. I cannot emphasize to you how important it is for you to take a look at the replay of the seminar that took place on Wednesday that had all of the state people there. This thing is thrilling. There's just a couple things that I will tell you, and it's the same thing that I will forward to the selectmen in the email that I sent to Vanessa. The number one thing that came out of this from a project management standpoint was the town has to have economic development goals. The town. All right. So I know that EDC has worked on putting some goals together, which is great. This has to be at a town level, a joint agreement, understanding, no bickering, and I'll be just very, very honest, because that's the first thing that they are going to look at. It's kind of the benchmark against everything. They have outlined everything that they're looking for. And I think that I was thrilled when I watched it. I can't believe that they were able to pull this together. They have been working on it for a while. They talked to a lot of towns. They already have towns that they mentioned that they know will be jumping right out to the forefront. So I could go on for the next hour about how to put this whole program together, but I will just say that we have the opportunity of a lifetime. The town needs to get moving ahead on the few projects, okay, specifically, for example, the zoning, because if we don't get that agreed upon, we're not really going to look too good in terms of being serious about economic development. Amen.
Yeah, collaboration is the big deal.
Huge.
Demonstrating that at the highest level between departments. You nailed it, Claire.
Thank you.
Claire, has that link been sent out to the whole committee for the meeting? And if not, it sounds like I'd like to see it.
And I will send you out the link. We found it. I will send it out to you. There's actually two links, just so that everybody knows. Wednesday was approximately a 45-minute presentation from Karen Polito and her whole team, which essentially introduced the whole program. Following that, yesterday they're having 3 sessions, which actually steps you through what you have to do. I mean, this is grant money 101 by the numbers. I can't believe that they put this together.
It's awesome.
So I will send out the link. I'll send out both links and, watch it over the weekend.
I would send out the first link only. Let them, because the second presentation, I mean, all that is on the website, the webinars.
Okay, good idea.
And I
Yep.
think it was a lot of repetition.
Okay, good idea.
Cool.
So I think
I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, and thank you, Claire and Marika, for being on top of it, because yeah, that's, I think, one of the, things that we've come to realize in the past couple of years after being successful with some grants is that there's opportunities available for the taking. We just need to be on the ball enough to know what they are. And it sounds like not only is there opportunities for money available, but also, guidance on how to go about it. And I fully agree with that. And I also fully agree that, it needs to be coming part of the town's prioritization, not just, the EDC chirping on the side. And I think, that really speaks to what John was saying before about presenting to the board about, last mile transportation issues and some of the things that the brokers have been consistently raising about, getting Route 9 up to fuller vacancy. So I think all those kind of fold in together. And I do think also, being part of the master plan committee, that economic development is a decent piece of that. And I think with that rolling out around the same time, I think that does reinforce that, okay, this is part of what the plan, the plan for the town going forward. So, I think that hopefully all of those things are merging together at the right time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any more on that? Because I'd like to. This sounds like a good transition into downtown. Well, you're already on, Julie.
Sure.
By the way, I really like the color of your room.
What?
I like the color of your room.
Oh, thank you.
The blue, very pretty.
So we had the Board of Selectmen met a week and a half ago to discuss the first final, not final, but first final draft of the zoning bylaw. We did discuss some of the comments that EDC had made, and what the board decided, which I'm okay with, is that, we would go with the consensus as a first pass, because at the meeting that was held back at the end of November, there was a quorum of both the, of us, the planning board, and the Board of Selectmen all together. And there was a consensus on a lot of the sort of main points. So the board decided they didn't want to submit something to move forward that was outside of the consensus. For us, I think the biggest piece of that was the FAR, the floor area ratio. I did discuss a little bit about why we thought it was appropriate and why both Adam Costa and Judy Barrett, our consultants and lawyers, had agreed that it was appropriate to go higher, or at least to allow the planning board discretion to have a higher FAR based on what we're seeing in other towns. And, if we want to permit multiple stories, that FAR at the where it is right now, which is 0.35, or I believe it's 0.5 by by discretion of the planning board, it is on the lower side, and maybe considering at least upping the what the board can do with some discretion to allow for a good project to come in. And there was some agreement on that, but they still decided not to make an official change yet, to wait and allow that to work itself out through the planning process, because again, they didn't want to go against what the consensus had been among the three committees. So I think that makes sense. Obviously, we still would like to continue to promote potentially a higher FAR, but again, we want to keep the project moving forward. So there was some discussion about the forum, which we talked about at our meeting the other week. Lisa brought it up. I was surprised that a few people initially were, wondering if it made sense to have a forum prior to the planning board committee, the planning board public hearings. But I think we agreed that they agreed that they would consider that they would go ahead with the forum. And so I think on their next meeting is this coming Tuesday, and I think that's when they plan to set a date. The one follow-up item, and I didn't get a chance this week to follow up with Lisa, is that they did agree to allow us to send those materials that Marika put together out to residents, but it was going to be subject to Lisa's final edits and review. I haven't seen that come through. Marika, have you been in touch with Lisa at all about that?
No, I sent her the edits couple of weeks. I mean, when was it? Before their meeting, like a couple of weeks ago. I haven't heard back from her, so yeah, I don't know.
I just
Yeah,
spoke to
and my
Lisa
week was just
recently,
crazy, so-
and those have been, your edits have been approved. So we can send that out. When, I do have a question though. So one of the things I've been hearing, people are worried about design guidelines. Oh, there's no design guidelines for downtown, blah, blah, blah. Now, are we allowed to, the design guidelines that you put together, Marika, are we allowed to send that out as the information packet as well? Or is that a totally different thing that we got to talk to planning?
That's a different thing, I think.
Because that we've
Yeah,
sent to
that's
Karina
separate.
as well
Because
as,
those are, I think those need, that's why we were hoping they would be discussed with the planning board. I mean, maybe we have to decide who else needs to have a look at them and have a say in it. Like maybe the historic commission could have a look at it and see what,
but those have been sent off to the selectmen as well as planning, as Karina?
Yeah, they were sent to everyone like a month ago or more.
I'll follow
Yeah,
up
and
on
I
that.
actually
because-
resent them recently as part of a discussion with some questions after our meeting. I think from our meeting 2 weeks ago, I followed up because, we had a lot of discussion around the design guidelines and some potential pitfalls as far as timing, and making sure that we have something in place and really understanding who's responsible for both putting the design guidelines together, and is that the planning board, or how other towns have put together separate boards or committees to prepare those, and then also enforcement going forward, is that the purview of the planning board, or is that a separate design review committee? So those were questions I raised for the board. Again, I don't think that's necessarily EDC's problem to solve that, but I think I just wanted to make sure everybody was thinking about those issues, because we don't want to be in a position where we've got all this great momentum with the zoning bylaw itself, but people don't understand, not that people don't understand, but we don't have the design guidelines to back it up that sort of are really the vision of the town, so
Have we
we're
received
allowed
any
these sort of
feedback at
structural
all on
things,
what she put
but what is
together?
it going to look like? What?
Have we
Sorry,
received
John.
any feedback at all on what Marika put together from anybody? No?
No, I think, I mean, right at this point, I think the Board of Selectmen need to just have a look at it and make a call. Like, okay, I think we should go forward with maybe a separate commission who looks at the design guidelines, but I think because no one else is, we can't make that decision. I don't think the planning board is gonna do anything before their public hearings. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, but right now I feel it's kind of just stalling.
But it's there. So I just want to make sure that we have it together in case, like, that's not my purview. I don't understand the design guidelines, but what you put together, Marika, I thought was excellent. I think it was a great starting point. So maybe
Yeah,
we can have people take a look at it, and just because I'm pretty sure that will come up in the public hearings.
oh,
And-
I'm sure, and I resent it to a couple weeks ago before the meeting, and with my questions and comments, and and all these things, and I haven't heard feedback on that, and I did raise it at the Board of Selectmen meeting too.
Okay.
But it is, yes, I am worried that could be something that stalls things. So
I just want to make sure that we're prepared for any questions or anything that comes up at these, that we can say, oh, we have it, it's being looked at least, or, we've got something together, a draft together that that's been brought before the selectmen, as well as planning to take a look at and figure, what I mean? Just so people don't think that there's nothing there, that there's a something, but
Yeah.
I
think the threshold issue is who is responsible for it and when. And I think that's something that the board should probably take a look at, hopefully, and give some guidance on.
Jesse, I know that you
It's
have
their
limited
purview.
time
I don't
today.
actually know. Maybe I don't know if it's their, because it falls under zoning. Like, I don't know if that's the planning board purview to make that call. Maybe I'm not sure. But I think, either way, there needs to be some decisions made as to, and maybe, I know Jesse's in the audience. I don't know if he wants to weigh in on that. If he has any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Or Sam, as a Board of Selectmen member. just because that is the thing I'm worried about, and I just don't know where it belongs. And I know, we've sort of done what we can by Marika putting together a draft just to sort of get the conversation and the ball rolling, but it needs to go on from there, from someone who actually has, from a community that has authority to do it. So,
Morning,
so
guys.
Morning, Jesse. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's nice to be with you.
2 days in a row, you lucky guy.
You lucky guy.
Yeah,
And I
right.
get to be John Wood too. Our next planning board meeting is February 8th. And this has actually been on our agenda as a discussion item for the past, I don't know, 5-6 meetings. This agenda item is something that we look at every meeting and briefly discuss. But what you're talking about right now in terms of the design parameters is not something that I have heard discussed at any previous meeting. So my recommendation would be that we sort of coordinate, what you're looking for in terms of guidance through Sarah and Karina, and make sure that we go over that on the 8th as a discussion item. And, Marika, if you want to talk to me offline about that line of communication and what you need, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay,
And,
great.
Awesome.
I think you have my contact info, but if not, John's got it.
Yeah.
The reason that I asked John to let me Zoom bomb you guys today is regarding the affordable piece. And this is 100% on me that I was not able to attend the joint meeting that was done with planning, BOS, EDC, and SHOPSI. And since I'm on 2 of those things, it's pretty embarrassing that I was not able to attend, but I was just overwhelmed with work at the time, professional, non-town stuff. So the reason I wanted to jump in today is just to see if there's any leeway on the affordable thing. I had actually sort of pushed for a far more restrictive or more affordable friendly component. And I certainly understand why, there'd be pushback on that, but it's been reverted now to 8 units and 12.5%. So I guess my question is, does the committee have any appetite at all to review that?
So this was something that was discussed very thoroughly, because we, aside from everything else, our committee, the consensus has been that we strongly support affordable housing, and we see diversity in housing specifically as a major component of what our mission is. And that's why I think the mixed use piece is very important as well. And absolutely, I think, because we have to, and because it's the right thing, we need to be thinking about affordable housing and how we can incorporate it and where the right places are. And I definitely encourage you to talk to Tom Biscool if you haven't had a chance yet, because he was just so informative. And I'm sure you know a lot of it already too. I mean, it was very informative to me, and he was certainly one of the stronger proponents of making sure that this was incorporated. But by the end of our discussions with Judy Barrett and who was the consultant that we hired, and the joint discussions of the board, and Chelsea, same thing as a member of SHOPSI and as a board member, the consensus came to be that this is what made the most sense, and that while we are all on the same page that we want to increase affordable housing, there just isn't the physical space for it downtown in any meaningful way, and trying to squeeze in more, trying to squeeze in another extra unit or 2 downtown would actually, it would stifle potential projects without really solving for the bigger picture problem of having affordable housing in town. And you know, and you probably, I'm sure you know more about this than I do, but there is some rule that's something like you can get extra credit for more units if you, like, you know, if you can put in 1 unit and get credit for 4 units or something like that, if there's some weird loophole. And if you increase the percentage, I think it is. But we decided that doesn't further the mission, the real mission of actually having units available. If we kind of use that as a loophole to fill a quota for the state without actually providing much more affordable housing, and that instead we should work to find other places outside of the very limited, restrictive downtown area, which is a very small space without a lot of potential for building, to put in more affordable housing requirements, because we, and I know John's been working on that a lot as well, and certainly we want to support you. And again, if there was consensus around upping it, I'm more than fine with that, and I think most of the board members are. But I think when we kind of did the math and looked at it logically, what that meant, we decided that that wasn't the right solution, and there was broad consensus around that. So I certainly encourage you to watch that the discussion, or to reach out to Tom Biscool, to Chelsea, because they were also very strong proponents that kind of came around and said, this just doesn't make sense. But again, it's not for lack of support of having affordable housing.
Okay. I did actually watch the selectman meeting
Okay.
that you guys participated in, and I listened to Judy Barrett. I don't necessarily agree with her that developers are going to completely disregard an affordable housing requirement. I mean, there's demand for housing is so high now. I think it's a lost opportunity. So I guess I respectfully disagree, but I appreciate you letting me chime in on this and join your meeting for a few minutes. And I look forward to the public hearings.
Yeah, and I'm definitely open to revisiting it, because like I said, that was part of even before we got CHOPC involved. That was part of the EDC's discussion around this and how we wanted to incorporate it, and that was one of the things that was important to us. So I'm certainly open to revisiting it, and we want planning board support, we want CHOPC support. I'm okay with changing it, if that's what the consensus is. That just wasn't what the consensus is, including from CHOPC. So.
Right. And I am just here talking for myself. I mean, I'm one vote on the planning board, and the rest of the board, you could have this go through easily 4-1. I don't even know. And the fact is, like you just said, Julie, Mimi, Marnie, and Dawn were at that meeting, and we're fine with the affordable component as it was. It just so happens that I, as an individual, am the planning board representative on CHOPC. Like I said, I should have been there. I wasn't, and now I'm kind of playing catch up on this. So, we're giving everyone a little grace for missing meetings these days. These are crazy times. Yeah,
in your line of work, you've been very busy this year. So,
but it's not too late. Like I said, this is on the planning board agenda every meeting, and which is how I found out. How I even realized that it had been changed, because I've been out of the loop a little bit. So it's on our February 8th agenda. It would be great if an EDC member can be there, for me anyway, so that we can kind of delve into this with the rest of my board too. And I think you'll get a better sense of whether or not there's any, real urgency to make any changes. Because it could just be, it's just Jesse Stein and the rest of the people are okay with that. And it's well ahead of the public hearings too. Sorry.
Yeah, and I'll say too that I've also been guilty of not attending all the planning board meetings that I intended to, just because there's so many meetings I can do at night as I'm trying to catch up from work because my
Right.
kids are home all day. So I completely understand, but I will try to attend on the 8th and so we
Can
can.
I just say one thing that maybe Jesse, even Dorianne, I guess agreed to take it out because she realized that the area we were
Right,
talking
that's
about
true.
was small. So, I mean, the EDC's been for adding affordable housing, but we take we take input from Shopsy because they're the ones who would be dealing with that part. So maybe talk to Dorianne as well and see.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We talked about it quite a bit yesterday. So I understand. It's just my, it's my own. Like I said, I'm one vote on the planning board, one planning board member. I'm just throwing it out there, and I appreciate you guys letting me join the meeting. That to give me the opportunity to establish a little communication on this. It could be nothing. You can disregard it. You can take it with a grain of salt. Or we can discuss it further. Whatever happens. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
I'm gonna
so much for
drop
doing it,
off.
Jesse.
Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, anybody else have anything they want to talk about with downtown?
I actually have one question. Sorry, Julie. So I didn't get that. So there's going to be a public forum? A date has been set, or they will be setting a date?
They're on their Tuesday meeting. I believe it's on their agenda to set a date.
So wouldn't it make sense to have it kind of separate? Or it'll be part of a Board of Selectmen meeting?
I hope not. I hope that it's separate. Somebody raised, I think it was Marty had, I think, mentioned that maybe it should just be part of a Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm opposed to that, and I believe I said that. I think it'd be better as something that is sort of a freestanding joint session of EDC and Board of Selectmen and planning if they choose to participate. So, as something that we invite people to raise questions about the specifically about the bylaw, because that's why, we had discussed, some people had said, well, we don't need to have the forum, because that's what the planning board, the planning board hearings are for, to raise these issues. And we decided that the forum, the consensus was, and most of the Board of Selectmen agreed, I believe, that the forum was separate. It was sort of, not just a town meeting, and it's something that we could really just make sure that we have the public engaged, particularly the abutters, and make sure they know what's going on and are able to answer any questions that they have, and raise concerns in case anything tweaks need to be made prior to the planning board hearings, if there's something that we missed or weren't thinking about.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so hopefully on Tuesday we'll know when that date is, and hopefully it's soon.
Okay. Anything else on the status of the downtown district? All right, I'm gonna bounce back now that Jesse's gone. And thank you for letting me bounce around on the agenda while Jesse was there. I know he's been buried at work, but I know he wanted to talk to you guys, so thank you for that. Marika, do you want to give your coordinators report?
No, that was I did that I just had the community one-stop program. I think, you spoke about the meetings and everything, so I don't want to, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
All right, moving on to item 4, Route 9 business. I know we pretty much touched on the update from everybody that we had talked about from the bigger buildings, but on the agenda, we have permanent outdoor dining discussion. Outdoor dining seemed to be a pretty big hit and worked out really well for a lot of the restaurants, and they've been saying that they would love to be able to continue that moving on. So we wanted to, Marika and I, excuse me, I'm trying to speak a little better. Thought it'd be great to have a discussion. We'll see what everybody else thinks about how we should go about approaching the selectmen, what we can do, what the challenges are, and such.
John, I just have a question.
And, sorry. Julie.
Go ahead.
No, so after our meeting, I guess with Capital Group, they said that it was the restaurants, especially, and I guess we all know it, are really struggling through this pandemic. So it really helped them to kind of have some kind of continuation of their business, to have outdoor dining. And it would be great to have that on a permanent basis. So we're both basically talking about Ola and Tommaso at this point. So they recommended if ways of how to solve that, and I think Rob had some great ideas. If we can explore those things, and again it has to do with parking requirements. But if we can set up some proposal and bring that forward to Board of Selectmen to achieve that. I don't know if Rob, you want to add to it.
Yeah.
Lisa's
So
got her hand up on this. Lisa Brascio is in the audience, and I do know that the selectmen and the town extended it to, I believe, 90 days after the state of emergency is over. But she's got her hand up, so I'd love, if it's okay with everybody, I'd love to recognize her and let her speak. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
yeah.
Sure.
Can you elevate her, please, Marika?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, thank you.
He's just muted.
Morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Sorry, for some reason, as you were bringing me over, it kicked me out and then brought me back. So, thank you.
Thank
for
I'm out there.
having me.
Pull me back in.
No, thank you. Just a couple things. The board has already kind of had this discussion, and I know that we had extended it 90 days past, but there was pretty good consensus on the board to find a way to be able to do this going forward.
Awesome.
I know many of us on the board had actually taken the opportunity to, be able to go and do some of this outdoor dining, and I know for some of these restaurants, Ola, especially, how many times did we all drive by there and all the tables outside were full, which was an absolutely great opportunity, as well as, going into next summer to be able to continue that and give them the opportunity to have additional business, because people do like to sit outside. So the board was very supportive of that. And I know initially EDC had brought that forward as well. So I thank you for that, and just know that the board is very supportive in, continuing this forward and finding the way to do it.
Is there anything we could do to help you? Because I know you guys have a lot on your plate, but I don't want to step on toes if you guys are already doing it,
No stepping on toes, John. I mean, and anything we can all do to help each other and work together. I mean, that's how this should work. And like I said, you guys had originally discussed this and brought it forward, and then the board took it up, and, we were able to make it happen. So no, I mean, working together, I'll certainly have it put on an agenda for a future meeting, and we can talk about, and EDC can obviously come and participate in that discussion. I know Lori Esposito has done some research regarding ABC. There's regulations and such that go on outside dining through the alcohol piece. So I know Lori's been working on that as well. So maybe we can put it all together and have a discussion and chart out the path, because I think that's something we're all supportive with moving forward with. And I'd be happy to shoot Marty an email to get it on the next agenda, not the one on Tuesday, but potentially the one after.
Well, that'd be great. Thank you. I think it would be a great idea. I know that Tommaso's is closed till spring. They wound up shutting down, which is, I hope that they're able to reopen. I see anything happen to any of our local businesses. So
Yeah, so John, I'll follow up. I'll shoot Marty an email today, and then I'll follow back up with you, and you can update the board for your next meeting as well.
Well, that was the easiest thing on the agenda. Thank you for attending today, and thank you for letting us know. That was a quick, easy. That was a nice one.
No, and Julie, I just wanted to say too, Julie, that you did a great job on the downtown initiative piece, that was just discussed. For some reason, I couldn't get into Zoom. It was giving me an error. I had the same thing happen last night during a meeting last night. So I just wanted to say you said everything I would have said. So
Thank you.
much appreciated. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything on outdoor dining?
Yeah, John, just one thing that goes along with outdoor dining, and this is particularly true of Hola and Tommaso. When they set those tents up, they're set up in the parking lot. So in essence, those restaurants lose parking spaces, and Southborough within its zoning has parking regulations for the number of seats allowed in every restaurant. So if you take up parking spaces with tents, all of a sudden the restaurants aren't necessarily in compliance with the zoning and could have some complaints. You could conceivably change the zoning and the parking requirements for restaurants that are existing and new ones coming in. But if the Board of Selectmen is working on a policy, perhaps there's some way to have some relaxation of the parking requirements for those restaurants, because at some point in time, both Hola and Tommaso, the idea of transitioning some of those parking spaces where you have the tents into let's call it patio areas could be something that has long-term viability, but isn't allowed within the zoning because they would in essence be in non-compliance. So I would just want to make sure that parking and the parking requirements end up as part of the conversation for outdoor dining.
Yeah, I think those two are mostly the one that would have the biggest problem with parking. That and the pizzas places downtowns and in town center and things. So
I was wondering about that too, when Ola put up their tents back in the spring, how, I didn't know if it was because it was temporary, they were able to get around the parking requirements.
I believe so.
But I'm wondering if, and the office building behind it, which I believe are those Capital Group buildings, I believe.
Yes.
I know there, I don't know if there's a way potentially, because the parking piece is an issue for two reasons. One, obviously being out of compliance with the zoning, but two, because you actually need parking, like even when in regular times, that parking lot could get tight. So I see that as a problem going forward, especially if Tommaso also was going to choose to do some more expand outdoor dining. So I wonder if there's a way that the board could help facilitate some kind of parking and easement agreement with the office space behind it, specifically for evenings and weekends when that parking lot, the office space parking lot, is not being heavily used. I don't know if that'd be something that'd be possible.
John?
But
I think they had an issue with that before.
Can I jump in, John?
Yes, please.
So I believe, and I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive that during the process with the building inspector approved the tents and everything to go up, they had checked with planning board. There were over the number of spots required for the building there. And I believe the building inspector didn't have an issue with the tents or planning board, I'm sorry. Planning board didn't have an issue with the tents based on the number of spots that were taken. As far as the easement and the connectivity, I know there was an issue, Julie, with the building where they tried to connect the two parking lots, and it was part of the decision. So the board made them, kind of fill that area back in. But again, there might be some way to put, people already have a walking path there. I mean, you can go from the furthest building down Route 9 and they walk to Starbucks. I mean, you see them do it, and you see the path in the grass that's now dirt. So maybe there's a way, you're right, to do some form of allowing parking, in that office building, but connecting it via a walking path, actually allowing cars to.
And at the end of the day, I feel like people are going to be doing that anyway, right? If you're planning on going to dinner at Tommaso or to Ola and there's not parking, you're probably going to go utilize those other spaces, whether you're supposed to or not, or I feel like that's likely to happen. So maybe having some sort of an agreement in place that maybe even includes a little bit of, common cost sharing for maintenance or something, maybe that makes it, it gives, maybe that is a win for everybody potentially.
And John, Mimi is actually in the participants, and she might be able to shed some further light on this. And she was probably aware of when the tents went up, the number of available spots. And again, I can't say she might know, but.
Well, Lisa, just to respond to that, When the tents went up, there was also the capacity limitation on the inside of the restaurant as well. So that would kind of lessen the number of seats and thus the zoning requirement. The zoning for Southborough is 1 space for every 3 seats plus 1 space for every employee. So that's kind of how the parking is calculated. Doing some slight change to 1 space for every 4 seats could open up a couple of those extra spaces within that complex that could transition to extra green space, plantings or patios. And that slight small change could actually benefit and potentially even help us attract new amenities to other buildings along the roadway. And, you know, it's a small change like that, which could benefit the restaurants now, especially once Tommaso can get to 100% of previous COVID capacity inside, but also add more seats outside, which would require the parking requirement.
Okay, and I'll try to dig up, I believe I had a document too, Rob, that was sent before the board approved the outdoor dining. I'm trying to see if I can find that. So John, I don't want to hold up your meeting if you want to.
No, that's what's left on our agenda, as well as the just minutes. Voting on the minutes and any unfinished business.
And as far as even that piece, Rob, that you just talked about, you know, changing it and you know, again, I see Mimi's in the audience and she's a great resource for that as well. I don't know, John, if you're interested in possibly bringing her over.
Anybody have a problem with that?
Put her on the spot, but.
Mr. Lachelle, do you mind?
Dan, you're.
Sam, I feel bad. You're the last one standing over there by yourself.
Mimi, you're muted. Okay. Maybe she doesn't have anything to say.
Okay.
The changes in red of insurance, Rose Garden also. You know what, John, I'll dig through. I know that I had seen some documentation with something from the planning board. So let me see what I can find and I'll shoot it over to you.
Thank you.
I don't want to tie up your meeting while I find it because unfortunately I have like 5,000 emails to go through.
No worries. Thank you.
John, I had typed up something and sent it to Marika. Can I send it to the full group? It just kind of laid out a little bit of those points I made in a shorter method than this conversation. And so I can share it with people just as a thought and something to think about, small change that might have a big benefit.
If you're going to email it to us now?
Yeah.
I don't know. We can can we discuss it today? I don't know.
I just wanted to, I'll send it out and we don't have to discuss it.
Okay, we can discuss it
so
next one.
I received it, Rob, thank you for that. So I was actually planning to kind of use your information and apply it to Southborough. And maybe we can,
okay, then if you've got that taken care of, perfect.
and then we can, you know, forward it to everyone and then we can discuss it at the next meeting and then bring it forward to their input or consideration.
If you don't mind.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, Mimi's with us. Does she want to say anything?
I believe not, because we had asked.
She just put a comment in chat.
Yep.
She said, sorry, I was on the phone. Did someone have a question for me?
No, it's fine.
No, I mean, we were just asking that we were talking about the parking and we're wondering if you had any input on the restaurant parking for the outdoor dining. All right.
Well, I know there are parking, regulations, obviously, and each site plan has their minimum parking requirements. So I'd have to look at particularly that site plan to see what their parking is and what the requirements are and whether they can afford to lose parking spaces or not, or what else can be done. I know there was talk about having people park next door because no one's in the office buildings, and the same owner owns that office building next door, and walk over because there's a little path.
Yeah.
But there's a way around it. Can make it work.
Now that's what we like to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hopeful. And that, I think those are really the only two restaurants in town that would have a big issue with parking and outdoor, because like Rose Garden, that is a huge parking lot for if they decided to do something there. And then I think New York Bagel has plenty of outdoor seating already out back, as well as on their eastbound one and their westbound. So I have to look into any other ones that we can probably try to find a potential problem with. But it's nice to know that everybody's in agreement that it was a great idea having the permanent outdoor dining. So thank you for that, everyone. All right. Administrative business approval of. I'm sorry. Does anybody have anything else on the outdoor dining? Okay, moving on. Administrative business approval of minutes from November 10th. Everybody have a chance to take a look at those, and any comments on it or changes or a motion to approve as written?
I so move.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Julie, did you second?
Yep.
Oh, thank you. All right, any discussion? All right, gonna go by roll call vote to approve the minutes. So I'm gonna call them as I see them. Ms. Conley,
Yes.
Ms. Duca,
Yes.
Mr. Moorhead,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Any unfinished business? I think we pretty much wrapped up everything today. Anybody have anything they want to speak about? Any new business? Public comment, Lisa, Mimi, Sam? Nothing? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Nice. I'm gonna go, before I go through, Suzanne, thank you for everything, putting that together today. Julie, as always, thank you. And everybody else, Rob and Chris, thanks for coming, going, meeting with all the developers and stuff this week. Mike, thanks for being here. Veronica, you too. Thanks for everything you do.
It's
So-
great. Lisa, Claire, and Mimi are here. It's helpful.
Yeah, it was great.
Very
That everybody
helpful.
did this. So thanks everybody for attending. So a roll call vote for adjournment. Ms. Conley, did we already do that?
Yes.
I can't remember if I did it or not, so I'll do it twice. Ms. Duca,
Yes.
Mrs. Moorhead,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins,
Yes.
and myself, I. Thank you everybody for being here. Have a great week. Marika, do we have a next meeting scheduled or?
I'll just schedule every other week, I guess. So so that would be February 12th,
Perfect.
Friday.
Good
8.
weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Have a great
Thanks.
day. Bye.
Yeah.